To start, I'll establish my position of authority. I have played the Lotto now for 13 years, making me an expert in Lotto. And I'm here to give you last year's Lotto winning numbers, and that's about as useful as my talk is going to be to every one of you. I was invited here to talk about, and the topic of this track altogether is how indie developers should thrive in the modern mobile ecosystem. So I'll preface this presentation with what I consider to be the current state of the modern mobile ecosystem, and should anyone feel upset, just apply #satire generously. So the conversation about free-to-play games altogether has roughly progressed like this. Well, it makes money. You do notice that you're sacrificing quite a lot of game design diversity with this model. It makes money. You do understand that you're coercing your users into in-app purchases. There are significant ethical considerations here. Money! That paid user acquisition is actually screwing up the marketplace for a lot of us. Money! And thus, with the conversation finished, both consultants and journalists were confident in proclaiming that free-to-play has won. So fast forwarding to 2016, my spam filter in my inbox is now blocking more emails from user acquisition agencies and mobile ad networks than actually offers for male member extension and exotic brides. In one example, and this is where satire breaks down, this is a copy-paste from one of the emails. We are dedicated to offering the most prestige technology to assist online game publisher in penetrating their target gamers. So that, in so many words, is the state of the modern mobile ecosystem. This presentation is intended as moral support for indies looking for any kind of vindication or validation. So Turbo Dismount, we Secret Exit are an indie company, and we're indie exactly in the way that we define indie. We're fully owned by the employees, we're income funded, we own our own IP, and we self-publish our IP. And Turbo Dismount was kind of a turning point for us. I mean, for 10 years we were living hand to mouth. We were almost about to go bankrupt, and then we decided we have to do something different, and we did. So this game came out first as a playable demo on a website. We did that simply for visibility purposes. From that we went to Steam Greenlight. Then PewDiePie played the game, then we got through Greenlight rather quickly. Then we went to early access, spent 5 months in early access, came out on PC, sold the game for $10, and we were already, we had already made back the investment, the development costs by the time early access was finished. So we were profitable from that point on. This was 5 months of early access. From there we went to mobile, so iOS and Android. That was about 6 months later. And the mobile version certainly has generated the most revenue, but at the same time the business model there is more of a spin on the old shareware model. So it's a premium unlock where the free version has a limited set of content. So all this current lingo about premium being dead, I mean, was premium dead on the Xbox Live Arcade? I don't think so. It's just, well, you can apply the shareware model and still get paid for premium. The Turbo Dismount factors of success that we kind of identified is that, of course, the Dismount brand itself is worth billions. Chuckles. Gameplay was physics-driven. YouTube popularity, obviously. We had Markiplier, PewDiePie, and all. I'm sorry I can't list the names, but we're deeply grateful for all the visibility that we got for the game on YouTube. We're talking about hundreds of millions of views for the videos. Then constant updates. The game has had 22 updates ever since launch. All of them are add a new level or a new vehicle. So we've kept that going. And the results and what we define as success are that right now our company has about 7 years runway considering our current burn rate. And we're a team of 5. Now, going into part 2, the hangover. And this is the subjective thing. I don't know if this helps any one of you. I just want to prepare for you. Like if you were at Petri Järvilehto's talk about, so you made a hit game, now what? Then this kind of mirrors that quite a bit. In the way that if you've spent 10 years in this kind of noodle budget indie life and you've had to ship, produce, and you're in that state of mind, and suddenly a hit happens. I don't want to call Turbo Dismount a hit, but anyway, it did bring a significant amount of financial stability to a company that didn't have that before. Then your company kind of grinds to a halt because what you were used to doing, that thing that you were used to doing, but then the parameters shift, and suddenly you question your ambition. You question, like, wait, what is it that we actually have to do? What should we do? You realize that for the last 10 years, you've just been so productive that you haven't actually learned anything new. And all of this comes into play. Also, once the word of your financial results comes out, your focus as a CEO is torn apart by constant approaches and offers for, do you want to invest in a racing horse? Do you want to buy a cottage lot near a ski resort in Sweden? And so you soon learn to block these out, and you start to appreciate your focus even more now that you have to fight for it. The obvious route for us, of course, would be to make a sequel, to expand into merchandising, to make a movie. And roughly, I don't think we're up to that, or at least we need to detox from this current crunch. And well, not a crunch. We haven't crunched, but we have been under tight pressure. So this period of time has actually taken 18 months. It's not like 2 weeks of confusion. It takes long while you're still, of course, keeping your current product up to date. And it's not just us. There's a wonderful talk from and a writing from Rami Ismail of Lambier about indie developers who have come into success and how they somehow have fallen to depression, but still others have found their ways of coping with it. And we certainly have not become millionaires. I'd just like to point out that the process is similar, even in a smaller and more humble scale, just when your company dynamic shifts. So this brings us to the reboot. So Petri said it already in his talk, that when you need to refocus and reboot, you just go back to your core. Remember why it is that you wanted to start making games to begin with. What are your artistic ambitions? What are your goals? Like, what do you love about games? If you have the opportunity to finally make a game that you want to make, then perhaps you should investigate whether you want to do that. We want to do that. I mean, our goal has always been to make good games with good people, and by good games, it's a very vague definition, but very clear in the fact that it doesn't include free-to-play. But the grass isn't really greener. On the PC side, the games that actually break through the noise, even in indie games, they're not games made in 3 months or 6 months by a group of 2 people. They might be games made in 2 or 3 years by a team of 2 to 10 people. So the competition is different. And if you want to go that route and you're able to go that route, then, like I said, the grass is not greener there in that sense. So what we're doing right now is we've gone back to prototyping. And it's amazingly good fun to catch up on, again, skills, learning new skills, learning new workflows, learning new tools, stuff that you really didn't have the time for. And so here are a couple of examples. This is we're Unity Studio. So here's a VR, room scale VR game which is heavily inspired by Geoff Crammond's The Sentinel. Here's a really, really solid vehicle physics prototype because Unity 5 has really failed in that regard. Here's an exploration into open subdivs, Pixar graphics technology. So basically creating a really, really low detail control cage and using that to drive a high quality mesh. Hopefully that'll make its way into the engines soon. If there are any Unity people here, wink, wink. And here is a Newtonian physics spaceflight simulator. I mean, we use pre-made assets. It just makes things more fun. So altogether, one of the hardest things in this phase is giving yourself that time and telling yourself that it's actually okay to take time and not be productive. Just be inspired, learn, go read that book you haven't read, pick up the tool that you've always wanted to try out and see what comes out of it. Ideas don't come out of production stress and pressure toward, yes, we need to have this concept, we need to launch a new game in 2 months. Like, you only get derivative products like that. This, having the time to finally prototype and try new ideas kind of without bounds, it's liberating. It's amazingly good fun. So, kind of in summary, those are just those two things, but profitability is so underappreciated in this industry. Every mobile article is about, taking in VC money, soft launching, proving your retention metrics, growing as a company, and then going for the IPO or your exit. And look, if you're an indie, then none of that shit applies to you. Your company is doing what you want it to do. If you want to make good games and be profitable, remain small, concentrate on ideas that you find interesting, then do that. Focus on that. There's no Bible to tell you that indie business model goes like this, and even on mobile that you should do it exactly like this. Ask yourself again, what are the reasons you want to be proud about your products? Like, do you want to have artistic pride about the game that you've developed, or do you want to be proud about your retention metrics? And ethical and artistic ambitions aside, as an indie, you can't afford to do free-to-play anyway. If you are income funded, then you're probably not going to have the war chest for purchasing your users. So the route, one possible route, is to make a good game, launch it on PC first. If it's a good game there, then bring it to other platforms, with mobile being an optional but possible consideration. It has worked for us. It worked for Legend of Grimrock. It worked for Banner Saga. It worked for FTL. It worked for Papers, Please. And all of those games, well, I'm not going to include Turbo Dismount in that, but the other games are games that I love to play and I admire them. Remain multi-platform friendly, because ultimately, unless you really want to go all out on PC, then do remember that your business might find its venues on other devices. And that's it. Like I said, useless.
Far from useless. I think it's this model that you've been very successful. A lot of people have tried and haven't had the same level of success. Because I don't think it's just the fact that PewDiePie played it. I think the fact that Turbo Dismount had this inherent sense of joy about it, then communicated well through a medium like someone like PewDiePie. So you talk down a lot of the stuff that you do, but in a funny way, and I love that. But it seems to me that you do actually focus on an audience experience first and foremost. Is that fair?
For Turbo Dismount, we know the audience, of course. There were Dismount games before, and we knew that it would have some pull. For the new games, we have no clue what we're doing.
But isn't that a freedom, though? Isn't that a kind of joyful freedom that you've got, a luxury point to be able to explore?
It is. It's absolutely awful. We have nothing to complain about.
So it's the first time he's ever had nothing to complain about. I've met him. Anyway, so I mean, that's brilliant. I'm really pleased for you. But let's see if we can get some questions from the audience, actually, because I could just carry on talking to you forever, as always. Anyone want to ask any questions? Any thoughts? Or should I just carry on wittering because I enjoy chatting to Jani? I'll carry on talking then. So I like to get to this key point I think you were talking about on your last slide, this idea that identify what is success to you. And I know we disagree on the kind of free-to-play versus paid. Let's not worry about that now. But to me, that's actually kind of a critical thing. It's actually a kind of very important fundamental principle about knowing what it is you're making and why you're making it. And it's a legitimate thing to say, I'm making a commercial product that's going to appeal to 10 million people and you have to build that game. But I don't think it's an indie, like you say, I don't think it's an indie decision.
Well, there's of course, like what is an indie is a very vague concept. I like to more consider us an independent developer as sort of an indie. Like if you go indie, then it's more there are more artistic considerations than we really take into account. But for even to be indie, you have to have that independence reach. So if you're income funded or publicly funded, that's the way to go. I mean, once you sign away control to an investor or a publisher, then that goes away.
Well, it's an interesting question because, like I say, some people like you say, it's about who owns the money. Other people say it's about the type of interpretation of content that they produce. And I don't know if either are invalid or I think they're both valid in different ways, but they mean different things to what kind of things you make, don't they?
Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I say that is because we've got investors in the Rocky Horror game that I'm making, but they're not involved in the day-to-day decision making at all. In fact, they just happen to want to help support that process happen. So investors can enable, but it's when that border, then that blur happens, I suspect, is when you stop being.
No, I mean, I want to be clear.
Yeah.
Certainly I sound hostile toward everything that is not me and mine and ours. But I mean, it's just, we're not good at playing the free-to-play game. Other companies are. And whatever the business model you throw yourself into, then just at least be aware of those choices and their implications. I mean, there are many indies who sign up with a publisher thinking that it's a good thing when they ultimately crash headfirst into the reality of milestone payments. So that's one. Personally, I have very little experience with investors and how that affects your board level decisions. But still, we're talking about board level decisions, and you're no longer there alone making them.
Yeah.
So there is this strict goal in your company that you need to adhere to.
I suppose it really, again, I think it comes back to working out what success is for you, whether you need an investor, whether you can do it you're alone. It's what are you trying to achieve and why. And I think it sounds like you're kind of living the dream which a lot of us want, which is I want to be able to experiment making cool things.
Right now, I will be back with my hat in my hand in the future, no doubt. But right now, to be able to do prototyping and refocusing without terrible pressure, it is amazing.
Great. I'm so glad you got it. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Lovely seeing you.